The story started with a social media post that went viral. Young Job's shaky, red-eyed voice said that Rasheeda Frost had spent a night with him in secret and was now carrying his child. Timelines exploded. Betrayal allegations circulated like wildfire, and fans were shocked. But in a surprise move, Kirk Frost then gave an ultimatum, requesting a live-stream test to confirm the father's identity. There are rumors that Jock's revelation was a planned attempt to harm Rasheeda's reputation and sever her relationship with Kirk, rather than an expression of love. Jock orchestrated the entire reveal, according to insiders, in order to damage their marriage, to ascend to the throne of paternity and ride the dispute. As Kirk, caught between rage and heartache, swore to defend his name and uphold his family's dignity, tensions were high. As the story deepened, the cast of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta watched in stunned silence while friends chose sides and the family was left split. The world is now anxiously awaiting the Deno results to determine if they will support Frost or uncover a secret that could end the world. As we explore every shocking element of this paternity dispute, where loyalty is at stake and a single lab result has the power to permanently alter lives. Stay tuned. On a calm afternoon at the Frost home, Kirk Frost first saw the tape. Kirk's hand shook around his phone when he broke the stunning news that Rasheeda Frost had slept with him in secret and was now expecting a child. The buddies' texts attested to the fact that this was no bluff. The world watched as Jock went live, receiving millions of views. Kurt was staring at the screen with his heart racing, and the words, "She's carrying my baby." The family was divided before he had uttered a word. Rasheeda was in the kitchen, hovering at the counter with her phone in her fist. Producers were hammering at her door, so she had first heard the rumors. She tried to dispute it, but there was no denying it after watching Jock's film. She turned to face Kirk, who was standing at the doorway with his jaw clenched, and started crying. When Kirk called an emergency meeting at the studio that evening, the room felt like a storm trap. Kirk's voice was steady and low as he said, "We're doing a Duna test." Rasheeda's eyes widened and she said, "Please," but he held up a hand and said, "No more guessing. We find out the truth for our family." Carly Red glanced around to see how people were reacting as producers, actors, and assistants congregated in the green room, talking off the walls. As he shook his head and flipped through Jock's live replay, on his phone he whispered, "Does anyone know what's going on?" Bambi suppressed a gasp and put her fingers to her lips. The room was quiet when Kirk came in. He was at the head of the table and exuded authority. A timeline for live exposes, contact details for dental professionals, and a draft paternity order were among the documents he set out in front of him. The producers looked at each other anxiously, and one cleared his throat as he stated, "I want samples taken tomorrow morning, lab results by the end of the week, and I want the entire process filmed." Kurt interjected, saying, "Kirk, live filming is risky legal issues and privacy concerns. I'm not concerned if Jock, who had been resting against the doorway with his arms folded and his smirk fading, stepped forward and questioned, 'You really going to humiliate her like that? He wants to play games with my wife's reputation and our marriage, so he'll face the light.'" His tone was taunting, but there was also a hint of fear in it. Kirk stood with his eyes blazing, saying, "I'm protecting my family." The next morning, the atmosphere was electric, word got out, and a showdown took place in the parking lot full with beautiful vehicles and camera vans. Kirk shook his head. "But we'll see. If you lied, if you influenced her in public or private, we'll know. We need to control the narrative." Carly read, and Bambi hovered nearby whispering strategy. Kirk and Rasheeda arrived together, hands intertwined but tense. Jaw pulled up moments later, music blasting, eyes alert. Security formed a human wall around the entrance. Upon entering, staff hurried to set up lab equipment tables lined with swabs and biohazard bags. Everything is certified for paternity testing. Cameras rolling from multiple angles, and a mobile lab team in scrubs stood ready under fluorescent lights. When the technician called for samples, Kirk went first, swabbing her cheeks, turning her head, and keeping her eyes on the camera for 15 seconds. Jock followed, and his smirk turned to concentration. Rasheeda was last, closing her eyes, exhaling, and submitting her swab. Lab assistants sealed the tubes and labeled each sample with a barcode. The leads called out chain of custody confirmations, and fans outside cheered or jeered through the windows. Chaotic stood by the monitors, ready to cue the live feed, and Rasheeda's bravery turned to tears as she listened silently, traced her wedding ring, and set her pulse racing. After the samples were collected, the team placed them in a sealed cooler bound for an accredited nail lab. The production manager stated that the results would be back in 48 hours. Exact match, or exclusion. Producers sent notifications to all fan accounts and gossip blogs, and within minutes, thousands of comments speculating on the results were trending on Dr. Nadrama. Another person said, "Truth or nothing." "I'm sorry you had to do this," she whispered, and Kirk looked up, his eyes red, and said, "I'm sorry you're in the middle." He took her hand, and Carly Red clapped her hands. "All right, people, let's get back to work." The waiting game began. Over the course of the next day, tension simmered, and cameras captured behind-the-scenes glimpses of Rasheeda in a corner, head in hands, and Kirk pacing the hallway while muttering, "We will get the announcement sequence ready." Calculations. That night, Rasha lay awake in the marital bedroom with Kurt sleeping next to her. The moonlight filtering through the curtains, her mind racing through every moment of the previous months. Jock's confession, the leaked voice notes, the hospital rumor, and the first nail revealed that had cleared Kirk, wondering what the next result would bring Kirk stirred. Producers edited teaser clips for social media. And who's the father? Segments played non-stop on gossip sites. "Are you all right?" She then turned to face him while sobbing. Kirk slipped and said, "I'm scared." He pulled her close to him and added, "Me too, but whatever happens, we'll handle it." Just before dawn, Kirk vanished to check his phone, and a message flashed. Lab processing delayed, contamination detected, knee rehab. His heart fell. Contamination. Now, the pivotal moment was in danger of being ruined by procedural blunders. "What contamination?" he inquired after tracking down the head lab tech in the hallways. A second round of samples was collected in the early morning hours under more stringent guidelines. Supervised collection without external contact, with cameras, recording each stage to prevent future disagreements. There was an urgency in the air. The technician looked up nervously as the sun rose, noticing that one sample did not match collecting standards, and the director exclaimed, "We've got it! Next stop, the lab, no more delays!" The vials were sealed once more, Kirk's fist hitting. The table or an outside supper could have caused it. The countdown came to a close as the group gathered in the main stage area of the studio for the live nail reveal. Producers, crew, and a few loyal fans selected for special taping were seated in front of a semicircular desk. Overhead, a big screen was poised to show the outcomes. Rasheeda was seated between Kirk and Jock, who were seated on opposing ends of a shaky ceasefire. Overhead, microphones hung, and oddly, Carly Red took the podium. She said, "Thank you all for being here," in a composed yet authoritative manner. She waited for the tension to build before announcing the findings, saying, "After days of speculation, preparation, and emotional turmoil, we are ready to reveal the end results that will answer the question on everyone's mind." Kirk's eyebrows narrowed, Rasheeda's eyelids flickered with tears, and the lab technician shifted in his position, his knuckles expanding as he clutched the desk. He broke the seal and cleared his throat as silence descended like a shroud. His quiet voice was heard by the lab technician. Kirk Frost is the biological father, as confirmed by the DNA test. Relationships, reputations, and a little life were at stake, while the outside world paused on screens. Kirk Frost is the biological father, as confirmed by the DNA test. The studio erupted in gasps and whispers after a deafening silence. And Jock stumbled back, his eyes wide and unblinking, as though the words had Kirk took a deep breath of relief as he leaned back in his chair. Relief and shame fought for control of Rasheeda's heart, causing her to collapse against Kirk's shoulder and cry. The verdict startled fans, as social media erupted in both jubilation and derision. As Kirk clutched Rasheeda's hand, emotions were running high, and Jock's sneer disappeared under the weight of loss. "This test was rigged. You paid them off." Jock got up unsteadily and slammed his hands on the table, his voice breaking as he yelled accusations. The crew stopped. Kirk's voice grew calm but forceful as he straightened it. "These findings are verified." Rasheeda's tears slowed as she looked directly at Jock, her eyes blazing with hatred. "You lied about me for clout," she murmured. The exam certainly drew the family back together, but behind closed doors, Kirk paced the corridor with a phone clamped to his ear. "You lied about me for clout," she yelled, and Jock sneered, "I told the world what you tried to hide." He said, "We need confirmation from a second lab." You could hear the lab tech saying, "We can't authorize another test without a court order." Rasheeda muttered, "We proved it." And Kurt shook his head and closed his eyes. What if Jock found a loophole? To challenge the verdict, she said. He said, for now, in a halting tone. As this was going on, Jock withdrew to his dressing room, shutting the door behind him and settling himself into a chair with his head resting on his hands. It seemed like a jail in the empty room. As he paced close by, his manager said, "Your sponsors are leaving. The controversy broke the public turned against you," the manager grumbled. "Then I'll deliver another twist," he growled, "and they'll have to listen." Outside the studio, fans and paparazzi flocked, and a crowd had gathered. Phones. "I can't lose this," he growled, slamming his fist on a table, scattering papers. "I'll fight again." Jock stood up abruptly, determination hardening his features. Reaction videos and memes were everywhere. Talk show hosts set up portions where they praised Rasheeda's boldness and questioned Jock's reasons. The story changed from one of scandal to one of vindication. The truth had realigned loyalties in Kirk and Rasheeda's favor, at least in public, but it left the family split. Producers gathered in a narrow corridor with Carly Red and Chaotic. "We ride this wave," Parley stated, avoiding eye contact. Among the fans was a sign that read, "Bina, don't lie." With her eyes hanging eagerly, Rasheeda used the tissue to clean her face in the green room. One murmured, "You were amazing." And she trembled as she answered, "I never wanted this fight. Only peace." Bambi walked by inside, overheard, and paused, shaking her head with a look of sympathy in her eyes. After strategically releasing the entire unveiling video, Light prompted confessions. Kirk and Rasheeda spoke from the heart. After Chaotic nodded, producers concur, and social copy is already being written on phones. Cradled her in a loving hug and raised her head to receive his confirmation. He swore, "We won't let this break us." Relief flickered behind her tears as they fell again. "We'll heal," she replied with a resolute tone. Kirk took over the microphone as the live feed resumed. He stated, "I asked for the truth, and I got it," in a firm voice. With her hand winking at his, Rasha joined him at the podium. Together, they criticized Jock's slander effort and expressed gratitude to supporters. Producers pushed Jock onto the stage, and he apologized shakily. "I gave in to the drama." Kurt stopped outside the bedroom door and gave Rasheeda a quick glance. "We did it," he said in a whisper. His statement, "Yes, but at what cost?" sounded hollow to many spectators, who either booed or stopped watching the webcast. Under a cloak of protection, Kirk and Rasheeda went back home later that night. Weariness took the place of the exhilaration from the live performance as they strolled down the silent hallways hand in hand. Their kids slept upstairs, oblivious to the tempest that had raged all around them, entered the room and shut the door, silently after entering. Jock's world, meanwhile, was in shambles. He felt like a bullet as he browsed through hateful headlines and memes all alone himself in his apartment. Messages buzzed through his phone, some telling him to back off, others to exact revenge. Crushing under the weight of his failure, he shut it off and collapsed into the couch. "How do I come back from this?" he said to the empty room as the city lights outside his window blurred. The next morning, Kirk got up early to check his alerts from Rasheeda and Kirk Frost. When a test victory was hailed as a landmark milestone in reality TV history, Frost's statement was popular. As he embraced Rasheeda on the couch, he was moved to tears by the outpouring of encouraging comments in his feed. Weary, yet hopeful, she sipped her coffee. She said, "Maybe now we can find normal." And Kirk gave her a forehead kiss. In the meantime, Jock's ex-girlfriend sent another purported text in which she said that Jock boasted about orchestrating the whole controversy months prior with the caption, "We'll build a new normal together." Calls for Jock's cancellation were triggered by the new leak, and even some of his most fervent followers admitted that they felt used. But without a doubt, the emphasis had changed, with Kirk and Rasheeda standing together in the middle despite their wounds. Producers worked on the upcoming show throughout the week, which would feature a close examination of the paternity dispute, unique behind-the-scenes video, and a poignant look at Rasheeda and Jock's aftermath. Teasers hinted at fresh information, perhaps Jock's final desperate move, or Rasheeda's journey toward forgiveness. Their victory marked the end of this drama, but the world was waiting to see what would happen next as the path to recovery loomed. The echoes of the Na revelation hung in the air like battlefield smoke, but the studio lights faded off as the cameras stopped recording. The afterglow of vindication was still strong as Kirk Frost and Rasheeda sat side by side on the set couch, but Rasheeda's eyes were deeply marked with tiredness. Network executives were setting up press tours, lawyers were complimenting Kirk on the airtight proof, and his phone was buzzing nonstop with congrats and voicemails. In the midst of the enthusiasm, though, there were fresh rumors. Would this win permanently alter their reputation, or was it merely one more chapter in an endless tale? Outside, Rasheeda's fans posted touching messages, and social media was ablaze, with memes of Kirk flaunting a "Did Not Lie" t-shirt. You got to your feet. Respect cannot be compromised. Their persistence was now commended even by talk show hosts who had mocked the original scandal. Viewers' emotions were running high as the anchor of a morning show exclaimed, "Kirk and Rasheeda turned adversity into unity. This is the redemption story we all needed." Behind the scenes, Jan-Jacques was plotting his next move as their unified statement played repeatedly. He stood miles away from the Frost home, alone in a rented suite, keeping a close eye on the consequences. His phone was in front of him, displaying an apologetic text from an old buddy and screenshots of sponsors pulling out. He struck the coffee table with his fist, sending a rush of his chest tightened as he realized he had overplayed his hand. But desperation breeds ambition, so if one tactic didn't work, he would find another. Frantic texts, "Give me another chance at an interview, I'll leak something bigger." His manager's tired response blinked on the screen. "We're blacklisted. Networks won't touch us." Either he would die trying, or he would become the architect of his own resurrection. The Frost family returned to Atlanta with newfound optimism. Kirk was reading fan letters next to Rasheeda while she was making breakfast. The tempest that nearly upended their family was not noticeable to their bright-eyed son. Todd grabbed one of the pancakes and whispering, "You're my purpose," Kirk planted a kiss on Rasheeda's cheek. According to her, "We did this for him," as she examined Kirk's ring finger. Peace appeared for a minute, but the world outside still buzzed with gossip. Sensing that the ratings were high, the network created a week-long slate of specials, such as the dinner reveal, Jock's confession, Rasheeda's pain, and the Frost Files Beyond the Slap Dinner Drama Decoded, where producers put together highlight reels and glued them together with dramatic voiceovers. The network guaranteed that Kirk and Rasheeda will return for a sit-down interview that would air live. Access to their travels. Producers, who are constantly searching for a twist, had one more card to play, but the couple accepted seeing it as an opportunity to conclude the chapter. Jock was to be in the same room as them. Jock entered the stage tensely on the day of the studio bus, his shoulders rigid at first, his eyes darting across the lights, and then he walked to a different seat, grimacing at the sea of cameras. Applause welcomed Kirk and Rasheeda as they entered. Before they sat for the moderator's questions, they gave each other a quick embrace. "You inspired the nation with your story, Kirk Rasheeda. Kirk, how have you changed over the past week? What about accountability?" Jock leaned forward, his voice rough, and Rasheeda's eyes grew piercing as the audience exploded in applause. Rasheeda's hand smiled, and we found strength in one another. "We'll never take trust for granted," Jock said gently. "I never lied about that night," she said, "but I was too ashamed to speak up, but I never deceived him intentionally." Jock sneered. "Then why delay the truth?" Kirk interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "Because it was our business, not your spectacle." The tension sliced through the broadcast like a sharpened blade. In the backstage scene, Rasheeda broke down in the makeup chair. Kirk embraced her in his arms, whispering, "You're my hero." And she trembled, exhausted and grateful. "Thank you for standing by me," she whispered, and Kirk kissed her temple. "We stand together." Jock refused to back down, so the live audience uncomfortably shifted, and cameras captured Rasheeda closing her eyes and then strengthening herself. Jock sat in the corner, arms crossed, and was left out of the healing circle. The moderator ended the segment with a message that despite the chaos, the Frost family emerges stronger. Respect, honesty, and love prevail. Kirk and Rasheeda held hands. When the show returned, Jock attempted to downplay the damage by claiming that he only sought the truth for Todd's sake, but his words rang hollow. Fans at home texted friends, and Jock appeared desperate. The moderator then led the couple into a segment about rebuilding trust. As Kirk and Rasheeda passed through the studio's backlot with security and a small crew, Jock felt empty and lost his footing in the story he was trying to construct. He retreated to his dressing room and stared at his reflection, his eyes hollow, from the pressure of public rejection. His phone buzzed, a text from a rival influencer offering to help him revive his career for a fee. His eyes flickered with despair and desperation, and he tapped a reply. "Tell me more." That night at home, Rasheeda sat at her kitchen table scrolling through heartfelt messages, sirens of camera flashes following them like fireflies. Stories of women who stood up for themselves inspired kids to speak their truth. A smile appeared through her exhaustion. Kirk sat across from her, sipping tea. They didn't speak. No words were necessary. In the silence of their kitchen, the scars of the previous weeks felt less jagged. One held a sign that read, "Frost forever." Another exclaimed, "You're my inspiration." Rasheeda waved at her, and Kirk raised a hand in appreciation, woven them closer. But as dawn approached, Rasheeda received the icy voicemail from an unknown number. "You think you won? But the truth is far from over." She shivered, her heart pounding, and Kirk, groggy, joined her at her side. "What is it?" She played the message again, and Kirk's face darkened. What is that supposed to mean? Rasheeda's lip quivered. They looked at each other, and Jock activated his next move, listing a freelance journalist who was suspected of trafficking in sensational lies. Documents were drafted, a phony lab report suggested a second pregnancy rumor, and Jock typed frantically, "I'll drop this on Monday." Outside the city pulsed with stories yet to be told, another chapter in a drama driven by lies, retaliation, and the unrelenting pursuit of truth. Jock's manager peered in, worry lines carved deep. "Is this a good idea?" Jock's eyes glittered. "It's the only idea I have. Just be ready for the backlash." As the night grew darker, the Frost home lay silent. Two hearts recovered from a public battle. Two souls weary but unbroken. And no one is ever safe from the next twist. The next morning, as Kirk and Rasheeda sat at opposite ends of their kitchen table, the menacing promise of the voicemail reverberated between them. Kirk stared at his unfinished coffee, his mind racing, while Rasheeda fumbled with her phone checking notifications, but nothing had arrived. At last, Kirk said, "We can't ignore this." Rasheeda nodded, her eyes glimmering with exhaustion and fear. Kirk reached across the table and covered her hand, saying, "These are the files," in a low, urgent voice. Jock leaned forward, eyes wide, and said, "Exactly. Because then I can plaster the headlines with Frost's denial crumbling and keep the scandal alive." Word spread quickly. Video clips are screenshotted. People don't check facts. Jock smiles grimly, and he learns that back at the Frost residence, Kirk called Janet Hale, their entertainment lawyer. He paced the hallway and discovered that Jocks were planning something new. The pregnancy report from a private clinic, completely unsubstantiated but juicy as hell. The journalist's eyebrows went up, and if this leaks, Frost goes into overdrive to deny it, but fans will bite. "We'll send a cease and desist to known blogs and journalists," Janet said in a calm voice. Kirk sighed with relief and determination, and she said, "Do it now." Later, Rasheeda consented to record a special video message for fans, speaking directly into the camera as the production crew set up a simple background in her living room. "I want to thank everyone who stood by me," she said, adding, "The Nema truth was a gift of clarity, but rumors persist, and I refuse to let lies define my story." A shady blog shared a blurry screenshot of a clinic report that seemed to be verified, claiming Rasheeda had sought a second consultation. Kurt peeked from behind the camera with pride softening his features, and Rasheeda continued, "I asked for your patience as we addressed any new rumors with proof, transparency, and truth." The crew caught her final nod. The video would premiere at midday to prevent Jock's plan from leaking, and as usual, Jock's deadly attempt went live before Rasheeda's message. Fans gasped and conjecture was reignited minutes after the gossip site syndicated it. Rasheeda was standing close by and bit her lip, exclaiming, "It's not real!" when Kirk spotted the headline on his phone and slammed it down on the table. Kirk snatched up his laptop and said, "We have Janet's letters ready. They just posted without verifying." The audience was seated, the studio stage was lit by lights, and Jock strutted in his new leather gear as he filed injunctions. Before leaving for the law firm, Rasheeda gave Kirk a brief embrace. "If what I saw is real, Rasheeda's hiding facts again," the audience whispered as the main host began the show. "Today, we address the emerging rumors of the second consultation, the fallout, and the future of the Frost marriage." Kirk crossed his arms and firmly stated, "Those screenshots are fake, doctored." Furthermore, Rasheeda smiled politely, her eyes blazing with resolution and horror. The co-host asked Rasheeda how she would react to these fresh accusations, and Jock shrugged, saying, "We'll see what the lab says. Maybe it's true." Transparency: I've asked my medical team to release verifiable records to the court, not blurry screenshots from strangers. She looked at Jock. When the host questioned Jock about his intentions, he became agitated but eventually fell silent. "If you have something real, present it to the proper authorities." Jock remarked, "You sought attention. I wanted the truth for Todd." Jock followed the green room doorway after the show, mentally checking off fresh strategies, such as leaps, voicemails, and photoshopped pictures. Anything to maintain the scandal. However, more Jock-starring segments were covertly canceled by the network. The ratings had plummeted. His manager's voice was tired as Jock's phone rang. Jock hit the receiver hard, and they're taking you out of the season. Kirk, who disentangled Jock's aggressiveness from her welfare, "Don't use our son as a marketing tool," filled Rasheeda's eyes. Rasheeda put her head against Kirk's shoulder as they drove home, the windows down, a gentle song about forgiveness on the car radio. And she said, "I don't know how to thank you." Kirk kissed her temple and said, "We're stronger now. We'll get through whatever's next." That night, she smiled through tears. Jock sat by himself in his apartment, reviewing previous voicemails, including one from weeks ago where Rasheeda cried into his broken ear, trying to find comfort. With a flash of regret, he sent a text message that said, "I'm sorry." He gazed at the screen, wondering if an apology could repair the damage he had caused himself. Kirk got a call the next morning from the clinic defending Kirk and Rasheeda through a little party at their house as the sun rose over Atlanta. Carly Red raised her glass to the Frost heritage as producers, allies, and close friends from the show toasted to truth and family. Cheers filled the room, tested and unbroken. Tonight, Jock's absence felt liberating, even though his shadow had hung heavy. In order to make sure there was no documentation of a second visit, he also played Rasheeda the taped statement. She felt a wave of relief, and Kirk gathered her in his arms. Every stage of this now showdown has been witnessed by you, including Jock's smear campaign, Rasheeda's courage in the face of criticism, Kirk's steadfast defense of his family, and the lies that only serve to further splinter them. It's your time now. Are you waiting for Jock to take action, or do you believe the Frost couple is being honest? Tell us in the space provided below. Opinions are important in this explosive story. Click like and share your thoughts if you're impressed by the lengths some people would go to in order to obtain influence. Support for honesty and morality. Please click the bell and subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of the Watch This. Space for unique perspectives and the real stories behind the news. Updates on the next stage of hip-hop and love, as well as behind-the-scenes facts. The most heated fight about paternity.